Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live session today. I'm very glad to have you joining us in this great session. I am Shorek Gorbani, the founder and technical director of Project Control Academy, the leading global provider of online training programs in project controls. So, thank you so much for joining this session. This session is going to be packed with valuable insights and future readiness. I hope you are ready for that. And I would like to ask you to really make this session engaging. And the engagement starts with each one of you. So, may I ask each one of you who are joining us live to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat? Let us know who you are, from which country you are tuning in, and what you would like to learn by the end of this session. Also, I have a request if you can share or repost this live stream in your feed so others can also join and benefit from this value packed session. That would be great. So, about today's session, we are going to talk about a very important and hot topic about machine learning and AI in project controls. We're going to talk about how we can be prepared for that and basically future readiness. So, it's going to be an amazing topic that I cannot wait to start exploring this topic with you. And talking about machine learning and AI, I'm sure most of you have heard about this. At least it's a buzzword, if not. And nowadays, if you talk to tool or technology providers, you will notice that most of them are having the AI and machine learning either implemented in their tool or considering that for their development in their solution. If you talk to startup companies, you realize that a lot of money has been invested in leveraging AI and machine learning. And also for companies, if you talk to companies and if you are already working in a corporations, you will notice that even companies and leaders are interested in leveraging AI and machine learning to better manage and predict their projects. But my question for each one of you here is, are we there yet? We all have heard about AI and machine learning, but are we there yet in terms of applying and leveraging these new technologies in our projects? What do you think? Let me see who is here in the house. Wow, I see John Hale joining us. Very good to have you, John. John is a risk SME. He's also speaking at our Project Control Summit and leading the way in risk management. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. I see Marcel, a very active member of community, and actually Marcel is the panel speaker next week in a webinar we have. Thanks for joining us from Netherlands. We also have John joining us, another panelist. That's great to see our active community here. Thanks for joining us, John, from Denmark. We also have Saba joining us from United States. Thank you for joining us, Saba. Samson joining us, trying to refresh on project controls from Kenya. Of course, Samson, you're not just going to get refreshed, but also you're going to get ahead of the curve by the end of this session. So thank you for joining us. Very glad to see everyone here from all over the globe. We have Azhar from Philippines joining us today, and Sarah from Canada. Wow, we have many of you joining us. Thank you everyone for joining. We have Bian, a member of our team, joining us from Malaysia. And also Asibeli from United States. That's amazing. Sonam also is here, a member of our team, joining us here from Bhutan. Very good to see you. Wow, I just cannot keep up with you guys joining us. From Nigeria, we have Adam, we have Pardas from United States. We have, who else? Matt is here from Denver. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So please, again, share your experience or your thoughts on the application of machine learning and AI in project controls. Do you think we are there yet in leveraging these technologies in our projects? What do you think? Another question I have for you is, how about our team, specifically project controls, who is the analytical arm of the project management team in any organization? Do we have the analytical skills required to leverage AI and machine learning in better prediction and management of our projects? What do you think? Again, please share your thoughts in the chat. We will showcase that as we go through the program. And regarding the machine learning and AI, um, the sad news is that there is a big gap between the capabilities of the industry, especially for project control experts and project control professionals in the industry, and the capabilities that they need to have in leveraging these new technologies. So we feel like there is a gap. So in today's live session, we are going to talk about, first of all, the state of data and data analytics at the moment in our industry. We're also going to talk about the current developments in project planning and control with respects to AI and machine learning, and also the gap that I just talked about in the industry, and how we, each one of us, can be ahead of the curve and really learn what we need to learn now to be ready for leveraging these technologies as they're coming in a fast speed and we need to get adopted soon. So how we can do about that, so that's what we're going to talk about. So these are some of the topics that we're going to talk about, but as we go through the session, please have your questions coming. These sessions are meant for you to add value to you, so any question that you have, please have them coming. We will ask our question throughout this session, and it's going to be a casual conversation as we go through this. And about today's guest speaker, I'm very honored to introduce the guest speaker for today's session. You are going to actually get first-hand insights from an industry thought leader and legend, John Hollmann, who is known as the father of TCM framework, Total Cost Management Framework. He's also behind the development of many recommended practices and standards in our industry, including cost engineering, quantitative risk assessment, and databases. He's also the author of Project Risk Quantification book that you should definitely get his book, amazing book. And he contributed tremendously to the development of our industry. So it's truly an honor having John Hollmann joining us, talking about this hot topic of machine learning and AI in project controls and how to be ready for that. So please help me give a big warm welcome to John Hollmann here in the house. John, thank you so much for joining us in this session and opening up this interesting topic. Welcome.
Thanks, Shorey. I'm always glad to be part of the Project Control Academy things and talking with yourself and your husband. So anyway, I appreciate everybody joining on the call here. Names keep scrolling up on the list. A few of them I know, fewer clients, fewer AECE. But anyway, good to see you all.
Thank you so much, John, for your time, and always be willing to share your knowledge and expertise with us. And especially now in this session, I know your intent is to give us the future readiness and preparation about this wave of these new technologies that are coming. So we cannot thank you enough. But to get the conversation going, first of all, I had a very brief introduction of you. Can you introduce yourself for everyone and also tell us a bit about your experience when it comes to data analytics and these topics that we're going to talk about in today's session, John?
Okay, I think a lot of you do know me, but if you don't, John Hollmann. I have my own company for the last 18 years called Validation Estimating, and also currently a partner in a endeavor called Valid Risk. You can go to the website www.validrisk that does risk quantification online software. I am a registered mining engineer. I started working in the coal mines. I worked there for about 10 years, worked my way up to a principal mining engineer. And then the coal mines kind of in the mining industry had a rough patch in the 1980s, and I found myself migrating to the project side of the house. I have done project controls for owner and contractor organizations But really, if people ask me what my expertise is in the project world, it's cost estimating. I was a cost estimator at Kodak with a number of people you might be familiar with. They're very active in AEC International. But I was involved with strategic estimating, which is front end, class 5, class 4, working with a fellow named Larry Dysert. We worked together on a lot of projects there at Kodak. But anyway, that's where I really got involved in things. And I can still consider myself a expert in estimating. Then over the years, I've migrated to the risk side of the house. I found that the base estimating was more or less okay. But the big gap in industry was the poor quality of risk quantification for cost and schedule. And so I've dedicated the last 20 years in that direction, and that direction is kind of the statistical side of the house. It's stochastic, because estimating itself tends to be more deterministic and a little closer to accounting. I don't want to call it that, but the risk analysis involves statistics, and that's going to be some of the topic today here. I do also want to mention, in my experience, I worked for 7 years for a company called Independent Project Analysis, Inc., and I was responsible for the cost and schedule metrics analysis and metrics products there. And that's really where I got thrown in the deep water of data analytics and had to recast my learning and experience and knowledge. And that's a lot of what I want to share today, is what you individuals who are new to this may be facing when you start entering into the new world of machine learning and AI, as the software and the data needs come into your company. They're going to be looking for expertise and skills and knowledge that you may not have. And so I want to offer my experience, having gone through that 25 years ago, on what I've learned and what I've seen at companies and so forth.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And who can be better than John providing us this insight? So we appreciate you, John, for your time and sharing your knowledge with us. So, but before we dive into this topic, John, for the benefit of everyone, in case there's someone who are not understanding or have not been exposed to machine learning or AI, can you have a definition of these terms for everyone, so we are all in the same boat before we diving into details?
Well, machine learning and AI are all kind of a part of a analytics world of leveraging information and data that's available to us, or whether we scrounge it up or it's available. But it's been around a long time. We've been doing this for a long time. And when I was at Independent Project Analysis, we did kind of what I would call early AI, where we did a lot of manual regression, linear regression, different forms of regression. And so back in the day, we were kind of doing AI, but using our intelligence, applying the mathematical tools. Now what's happened with machine learning is that the software and the capabilities is becoming more automated, if you will. At IPA, we did the manual regression, but now the tools are set up to do what we used to do manually. We might take half a day for us to study one topic and run regressions, where machine learning might be able to do it in minutes, and constantly searching the data in an unsupervised manner, looking for relationships between the outcome you're looking at and whatever the inputs hiding in the database are. So the machine learning is simply mathematical statistical techniques that can look for those relationships. Whereas before it was manual with regression, I had to identify what I thought the input was and the output and test the relationship manually. That's all done automated. So machine learning has to do with the automation of that search and seeking of relationships. And then artificial intelligence is then trying to apply what it learns about correlations for whatever the purpose is that you have, whether it's a risk analysis or it's a better schedule or the unlimited number of applications for it, seeking to improve that. and it's real time. Whereas opposed in the old days with the regression, it was took months, if not years, studying, looking for good, solid relationships. Now you're getting answers almost instantaneously, even if we don't know really the value or we don't have much confidence in what it's saying. It's instantaneous. And I think a lot of you have done chat GPT, and I played with that myself, and it's amazing how fast and instantaneous you get a response, and it's kind of scary. Anyway,
Yeah,
kind of
true.
babbling here, but machine learning really is that uh, using mathematical concepts to find those relationships.
And the
Uh,
trends and algorithms and
yeah.
AI to kind of automate the process and coming up with predictions for us. So, with that, John, I think to be able to leverage AI and machine learning, we need to have a good database in our projects. So, first of all, as a foundation, right, to have historical databases as a founding, as a first step. But based on my experience, still that's kind of missing in most organizations. So when it comes to projects, historical data, we are not doing a good job, first of all, in capturing the data. Yes, there are a lot of data, but the structured data that the machine can learn from, still, to my knowledge, is not really readily available in most organizations. So how can we then leverage, and the technology is already there, as you say, it's quite fast, but how we can start leveraging AI and machine learning in our projects? What is the first step and what we can do about it?
Well, the first step is the fact that you need data and information and access to it. And while there's hope that we can just plug in the AI and it will use unstructured data, is kind of, I think, a little simplistic. I think we still need to do the table stakes of structured data. So as a company, we still need to decide what we want to capture and capture it. Now, whether that's cost and quantities and hours and durations and copies of schedule, it all needs to be thought through on what we want to capture and why. And retaining that data and putting it in a place where we can get to it, and that it's structured. And I don't think we should be hoping for the AI to live off of unstructured data. It will get there eventually, but right now, I think we still have 5 to 10 years where we're going to be dependent upon having structured databases. Like you, what I found is my clients, I don't want to name any names or clients, they wouldn't be happy, but very few, if any, really have good quality databases that are really useful for developing high quality planning tools for front end estimating, scheduling, risk analysis, which are kind of my fortes. And so it's a struggle. And so I've worked with a number of companies on trying to improve that, and they are. There's a number of them really doing a good job, but it's painful. And what's frustrating is people used to have good databases. I'm getting old. So back in the 1980s, 90s, when I was getting into the business, a lot of owner companies in particular had pretty significant databases and parametric and conceptual estimating tools based on that data. And that kind of went by the wayside in the 90s with outsourcing and so forth, and nobody picked up the ball. So those databases were pretty much trashed. So I'm working with some clients now that I know 30 years ago had good data, and now they have nothing. And the people that were involved with that data are all gone. I'll be retiring in a few years, and most of the people I worked with back then are already retired. So, but the data was there. Now it's gone. So now we have to rebuild that. And it can be done, and it takes time. We could talk about the data angle. So that's kind of the table stakes. Without data, there's no real value to the machine learning AI. And I also want to mention my forte again is the front end of projects, class 5, class 4, coming up with good investment decisions before you execute. I think a lot of people here on the call might be involved in construction, and the execution phase, that's a whole kind of different bailiwick. Uh, my world is making the best investment decision that's economical for the company. And then once you make that decision, now you have to execute it with good productivity and efficiency and safety and so forth. But there's different outputs you want from project controls during execution. as opposed to making good decisions and considering the risk in the front end. So we
Mhm.
have some time here, but hopefully I can get into if you want to get involved in the front end and the decision side versus being involved in the more deterministic kind of
Yeah.
final stage of execution. Anyway.
And John, what company capabilities have you seen in respect to data analytics in your consulting experience? You mentioned you have helped some companies. So can you share with us a little bit about what you have seen in terms of the state of data and data analytics at the moment?
Well, there's one example, and I can't get too specific, and I don't want to embarrass anybody or share anything that's confidential, but I've been supporting one company that's been working for the last year on implementing a database across their organization, which is global. And the struggles with the fact that the data was not well structured and that the regional parts of the company, each of them had different structure and different cost accounts and so forth. And the effort to try to pull that together to make the data universally accessible to the company. And then the second part was once it's structured and you have some concept and you've got all the data in a pile, structured or unstructured, making sense of it. What I've been very impressed by was, and I'm making me feel old, is that some of the young people that they were involved in this effort, how smart they were and their analytic capability, that they'd gone through school, they've been, deep diving into the computers and they understand Power BI and so forth. So there's a lot of young skills out there with the mathematical capability. We have to kind of plug those people in with the people that have the project experience in terms of the whole project life cycle and owner side construction. So anyway, we have to bring these young people with the mathematical knowledge, statistical knowledge together with the construction. But anyway, I'm just very impressed by how much they were able to achieve in 1 year's time frame. And the good news was that I've been involved in projects like that for the last 20 years. Earlier years, the team would spend a lot of time for a year or two, burn up their budget, not have a lot of value added outcomes, and then they would kill the project. And I've been through so many of these efforts that they started to structure, they started to collect, but it wasn't paying off instantaneously. So the vice president pulled the plug and went on to something else again and again. So what's better now is what I'm seeing is because the C-level people are now familiar with the language of AI, at least they want it. They think there's something there. They don't know quite what. Now they're starting to direct their staffs, hey guys, I want you to do something. And so we're getting this top down commitment. So that is the biggest step change. And that's why I've come to believe at this point in time is a turning point, because I'm seeing that commitment. Pretty much everywhere there's at least talk, if not money and action. And they're starting to put people on it, which was different than it was 5 years or 10 years ago when people, you throw one or two people at it, hope they come up with something, and then it doesn't work, and then they pull the plug. And so anyway, it's different now. So the good news from what I'm saying is that I think we're at the cusp of real change.
Exactly. Well said. And talking about what you just mentioned, we have a good question by Bien, John. So the question is, who then in an organization participating project controls do you think might have a suitable skill set to perform kind of R&D or test the waters in machine learning and AI?
So I think project controls has the basics of just basic math. They understand projects, they understand phase gate, they understand engineering construction. So if they have that project knowledge right now in some basic math, there are other people in the organization that may have some statistical and analytical skills. They understand regression or neural networks or whatever. R or Python, I'm not a programmer. I think there's one or two people on the call I know are taking classes. I see Lance there. I'm going to embarrass you, but told me he has taken data analytics classes. But anyway, there's nobody in the company with all the skills that are needed in one person. And so we need to somehow tie and connect those project control knowledge with the statistical and the people that are really good at the statistics. And it's very hard to educate either of them in both. And I can, again, went through that at IPA, and it was painful for the first year. They kind of said, here's data, go at it. And so I had some mentors or some nice young lady who sat next to me that just kind of helped me through that, and then started marching on. But that's the kind of knowledge everybody, I think, is going to have. I was somewhat unique, and very few, any of my peers had gone through that statistical gauntlet, if you will. I
Exactly.
think everyone's going to have to go through that gauntlet, and I think that's one of the warnings I'm going to tell people is, you didn't like statistics in your engineering class, tough. You're going to have to learn that. Because
Oh,
if you
and
go into AI and don't at least have a basic understanding of what it's doing,
yeah,
you're not going to be able to judge the quality of what's coming out. And if you can't judge the quality of what you're getting from it, then the value of you as an organization is, you're just going through the software. You're just going to be another data puncher or something. You need to understand what's going on and what works, what doesn't work, what's good quality, what's reliable. What do I believe and trust? And so that's going to take a lot of education. And anyway, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but
no, no, well said. And
yeah.
you earlier you touched base on Power BI and data analytics. So we actually have this course at Project Control Academy, Power BI, Visual Data Analytics, and I've noticed like the interest of our community getting into this. So perhaps that can be a step toward that, because what I realized through this program was we need to go through data shaping, data modeling before we automate our project control reporting process. And going to the back of the data and understanding how data is structured, that's the first stepping stone into understanding Power BI and connecting different data sources. So I think that can be also a good learning curve for people. And I've seen even companies, like we had huge companies showing interest in bringing their people to this program because they wanted to be ahead of the curve and automate their process. So I'm by you completely, John, and the importance of learning data analytics, and of course, later machine learning and AI really help us to do things better. So, but how to get started? I think it starts with each one of us, and as you mentioned, education is really key. So, thanks for bringing that up. I see a question by Sonam on the structured data and how we can structure data for machine learning and AI. And I saw Lance Stevenson is another thought leader here in the house. Thank you so much for joining us, Lance. Very honored to have you here. And he referred to this RP that I know you've been one of the leading authors of that RP on that historical database development. So do you want to very quickly touch base on that before we continue the conversation?
Well, it's like three different questions scroll by there, but the one about structured data, first of all, machine learning and AI, ultimately, the hope is that it can deal with unstructured data. So we don't have to go through the pain of worrying about cost accounts and things like that too much. I think that's a dream. Right now, the data sets tend to be closed off and they're not fully accessible everywhere. And so we still have to work with the structured data. But the structure really is in that recommended practice. So if you read 114R-20, that's kind of the old world of where we're relying upon structured data to do our study and research and so forth. So it has to do with having a work breakdown structures and project code of accounts is it's an old thing that have been around forever, and we still need to do that right, and we haven't been doing very well at it. I look at every client I have that's a large company that it's inconsistent accounts between regions, between business units, and I just frustrating as heck. So we have to also capture the attributes of the project, because we have to look for relationships between different numbers. So we need to understand the attributes of the project, whatever those are. Those might be in size and complexity and technology and so forth. And then so we can seek relationships. How is complexity related to cost growth and schedule slip? And that's a big missing element, are what are those attributes? The easy one is project size. You can get that from accounting, right? But let's say if you want to compare the skill and capability of your project staff to the outcome, can we find a correlation between your skill and better results? Well, something has to capture the skill. How do you measure the skills and the capability of your staff? So in the past, independent project analysis where I worked, they did that through questionnaires and surveys and talking to the teams and recording it. So they had, hundreds, if not thousands of data points on the attributes of the project system, the team, their capabilities, all of that. But they had to kind of manually and very painfully capture that through the interview process. So, and it's still a good thing. I still recommend companies benchmark, do that. Right now, it is the only database in the world that has that robust attribute data so they can do research of the practices, if you will, and the outcomes. Right now, all of the AI tools I'm seeing now are very limited in terms of connecting drivers of performance with the outcome.
And I think,
So I think I answered the question, but if you want to know how to structure data, go to 114R.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you already answered the question by Christian. So, could AI machine learning be used in first estimation by mining data of previous projects? And he wanted to also know on cost and schedule, and if you have any examples, which you brought the IPA as an example. But I think in our project, it starts with our own projects as a first step. Is that right, John?
Yeah, start with your own projects. And this is old hat. I mean, we all have dealt, anybody on the front end, we all understand parametric estimating, cost capacity, and exponents and things like that. That's been around for my entire life. The difference is that where do you come up with that exponent? So that's where machine learning can look for the relationship and come up with real models of cost. You have the capacity, that. It can go into the database looking for similar plants of that, and look at the capacity and see what the relationship is. We've been doing that forever, but we've been doing it through manual regression and has been what we've been using for a decade. So machine learning, it's the same. It's really just making it fast, automated, and it can seek relationships that we would not even think were there. So that's the problem with the manual one, is you first had to hypothesize what the drivers were and then test it manually through regression, where machine learning will just go into everything in your database and look for relationships and a lot of them are things you would never dream of. So that's the difference, but the fundamentals are the same. You have to have the data. Right now it still needs to be relatively structured, and difference is speed and how quickly you can go into that and look for those relationships.
And I think we have a question by Najma, which is aligned with the next question I have for you, John. We talk now, I hope everyone is understanding the foundation of AI and machine learning and how it works. Now, the next question is where we are now in this industry in terms of any development that has been done in project planning and project controls in respect to machine learning and AI. I know you've been part of several of those. If you can share where we are now in that aspect, and if you know anything that can help us to put our hands on, we appreciate your insight.
Well, where we are now is just kind of mind-boggling developments and happening in real time. So if you were to read a magazine article or look online, whatever they're talking about 2 years ago is kind of pointless because it's developing so rapidly. However, I'm very focused on risk, for example. Right now, one of the leaders on that is NPlan. I don't want to plug anybody too hard, but just want to talk about some of the limitations. Is NPlan is working with schedule data from the execution phase, mainly from the construction of civil projects, infrastructure projects, and it's doing a great job of being able to use somewhat unstructured data, and it can use kind of language processing to look at a schedule and come up with what is an activity, and it can actually generate a schedule now and understand based on the history what the uncertainty is around the schedule, and it can come up with recommendations for improving the schedule to reduce that uncertainty. But the limitation is that it's execution. It doesn't really have any data on the real, all those attributes, the drivers. It's not in the database. We don't know anything about the decision makers. We don't know what they did prior to the selection of the project. We don't know how they came up with their uh, contracting strategy, or what the capabilities of their teams were. So until we have all of that data, we really don't we're never going to understand why a project is overrunning or costing more than you thought. We're going to know some of it. If the uncertainty is resulting from the uh, quality of the schedule or the appropriateness of the logic in the schedule, it's going to be able to iron out that uncertainty. But it's a 5% opportunity for a 40% improvement, or 5%. It's tackling only a fraction of what we're going to be able to squeeze out of the thing. But it's a start. We got to start there, and it's worth it. If we can squeeze 5% out of the construction cost, that's great. But the problem is we have a 20% overrun. So what's the other 15%? Well, that's being driven by things we haven't even measured yet. So I think where we're at now is we're finding there are commercial products like Nplan or Octant AI, and I don't want, I could go on, that are just coming on the market. They've been funded by startup investors, and it's great, and they're valuable. They're actually useful as they are, even with all the any limitations that they have. But we're just at the start, but it's ramping up rapidly. And I think in 5 years, for every software product that's out there now, there'll be 10 that you're going to have to consider and look at. So we're at that ramp up point where we're definitely where it was mostly hype. I've seen cycles of this. There was a lot of AI talk 15 years ago. It was just hype because they really weren't ready. But this is not hype. This is real. So if you're going to get involved in this business, now's the time to go back to school, take some courses, learn those statistics. I think Lance had a post at the bottom there. Data science equals math, stats, and algebra plus programming plus domain knowledge. Those are the gaps you have to fill and put those things together. You need to understand the stats. You need to probably have some fundamental knowledge of things like Python. Plus, then you're going to combine it with your knowledge of the domain.
So do you recommend each one of us to go get a class on data science then?
Yeah, because the companies, I've never had a lot of confidence in my employers educating me ever in my career. It's always been my responsibility to develop my career. I don't depend on anybody else. So it might be great if they send you to class, but don't sit around waiting. I think you're going to have to go back to courses. Universities now are all offering analytics courses. There's professional opportunities. I'm picking on Lance here. I think he is a chair or co-chair of the AACE Analytics Committee now. So we have, opportunities like that through AACE to offer papers, hear papers, have discussions, and so forth. So, yes, you do need to go back to school. I had the fortunate or unfortunate experience of going to IPA and being schooled there, but that was unusual. If you can find that, that's great.
And the IPA resource that you keep referring back to, John, is it accessible? Anyone can get access to that database, or how we can use it as a benchmark to use in our projects?
No, that's I had that unique exposure to it, and
Oh,
it's a fantastic database. I was swimming in Nirvana as an estimator. I had everybody's cost and hours, and I was able to study them to my heart's content. But it's not. It's private. It's confidential to the clients. It's confidential to IPA. Even
okay.
if you're a client of IPA, you don't have access to anybody else's data. So confidentiality is their stock and trade. So they're very cautious about that. So it's academics can't get into it. You and I couldn't, and the clients can't. Now they offer some data, like the metrics that I developed there for the cost engineering community, but they were, a certain type of metric. It was useful, but it wasn't the raw data. There really is no industry data sitting on the shelf for anyone. I know there's a lot of work in the UK. They're trying to come up with data trust, and the problem is that, if you're not in a socialist environment where everybody or the legal system requires you to share data, I don't see it happening other than in the government-owned infrastructure sector. It's always going to be more or less limited to your data, your company data. So you're still going to have to swim in that swimming pool of your data. And that's a frustration with everybody now. They want to see everybody's data. They want to compare. Well, unfortunately, right now, in most of the world, you're going to have to go through the IPAs of the world to do that. Yeah.
So, John, we have a lot of questions on now the starting point in this, like which is structuring the data now. Joe has this question, like, how do you think a project control team should be structured to make the usage of machine learning and AI? Is there a need for data engineers and analytics engineers to get started on that? If you just provide more details on how we can be really leading this wave in our projects moving forward. Yeah, you mentioned going to university, learn about data science, data analytics, understanding the statistics and how it works is really essential. Is there anything else we can do in our projects to get ready for this?
Well, I think it's just part of a normal organization. I've always believed in as a function that you need a homeroom, a central organization to support the functions for project controls, whether it's estimating, scheduling, risk. And in the homeroom, you're going to have a variety of experts. When I learned, I was an expert in the, parametric estimating. Larry Dysert was an expert in databases. He actually was a programmer of that. And we did estimates, but when people had a need, they called on that. So for AI and machine learning, you will need some experts in data science to some extent. So it might be in a homeroom, you might have two people, let's say, that are really into the Python data science, and they may not be the domain expert. But you would also need the domain experts, the estimator and the scheduler that are conversant with analytics and can work with them. Now, eventually they may learn from each other and become more cross-trained, but I think you will have to have a data scientist in your staff somewhere. Then there's going to be other people that are just applying the tools. So the other ones are just, as this software comes rolling out of the startups, they're going to have to learn how to use it and leverage it out in the field. Maybe they're in construction. That's where they're going to use this tool. And maybe it's getting stuff from drones and all kinds of places. It's different than the front end. And then the front end is going to have to deal with how do we tie our practices and how do we improve our decisions, and a whole other set of issues that they want to tackle. But you need that homeroom. And so organizationally, I think the question was about the organization there. You will need data scientists combined with the domain expertise that we've always kind of had. We're going to have to supplement that.
Okay, fantastic. So now I think you kind of touched base on that. You brought NPlan as one of those that you have worked with. So Najma has, based on your experience, what is the best visualization library or tool for risk and cost analysis? So do you have any recommendation or anything that you would like to suggest?
Well, visualization's a kind of different thing. A tool for risk and cost analysis would be to use valid risk. So I'm going to put my sales hat on. I feel right now valid risk, the product I'm involved in, is right now the only data-driven, I should say, empirically based risk tool that covers cost and schedule across the project lifecycle.
And it's so easy to use as compared to other traditional tools, right? It's so easy to use, so inexpensive.
Yeah, and so it's not Monte. It employs Monte Carlo within it, but it's not based and dependent upon Monte Carlo. And we could get into a long discussion about that. As I would just say, read my book about the problems we have with the traditional risk quantification method. So we know, for example, ranging which is probably the most common, doesn't work. We just know it doesn't work. It doesn't predict the actual outcome, and it doesn't have any correlation with the actual outcome, but we keep using it. And so I would say, for first thing, stop doing that. Stop shooting yourself in the foot. We need to get empirically based tools. Now, if you're in schedule during execution, you should be talking to NPlan. I'm just going to say that. Or you might want to talk to Octant in terms of cost. They're putting together some benchmarking tools for cost. You need to start reaching out to those truly AI-based tools, but there's a lot of limitations on that. Like I said, it doesn't correlate the actual practices to the outcome, but it is really good for optimization of the schedule. So, but the tools are going to be improving daily, weekly. I bet, come back a year from now, there's going to be quite bigger capabilities.
Actually, last year in our conference, Project Control Summit, we had a segment, John, on just bringing some startup in form of a competition for 5 to 6 minutes of presentation, sharing their startup solution. And yeah, to our amazement, many of them were AI based. So some were just AI in construction, some were AI in planning. So there are a lot coming up as we talk. So many new companies and great solutions are already in the market. It's just us whether or not to leverage that. Some of the things that I've noticed throughout our conference and through those solution providers, in addition to what John mentioned, also In8, I have seen In8 doing great with applying AI in their planning tool. Project AI, it's another one I have seen, is based in Australia. It's just as the name implied, Project AI, so check them out. Gray AI, I believe there are a lot of companies called just having even AI in their name, so you can check that. For those of you who are interested in this topic, actually, we have a panel discussion at our upcoming conference, Project Control Summit, called Digital Transformation in Project Controls. And the panelists are the ones who are actually in the industry implementing this and leading that effort. So go to projectcontrolsummit.com and make sure you get your ticket now, because now it's still free before we make any tuition associated with that. So and join that conversation. So it's going to be a lot of forward-looking companies coming to the conference and sharing their tools as well, and what's coming up and what's new. So just wanted to bring that up in case someone is interested to dig into the topic further. So I think we are about to finish our session. I will go to one more question, and then we will have other discussion points as you wanted to talk about, John. So here we have a question. How does AI and machine learning affect productivity in project execution and delivery? We talk so much about the front end at the moment. So how about the back end? How it's going to help us with our performance in our project? Hopefully, if we have that in place.
Well, project controls always suffered from a lag problem, that our monthly reports are totally useless. They're 6 weeks late and very weak inputs. We don't really actually measure productivity. We haven't for 40 years. We don't have any observational intelligence of what's going on in the field. We just get progress measurements and some accounting data and things coming out of payroll and so forth. So we really have very limited data on the. So what I see coming down the road on execution is better inputs in real time. So whether it's the barcodes and the drones or wherever the information, it's going to actually be looking at what's actually happening in real time, and it'll be tied to BIM and so forth, and we're going to know what's installed and how long it took. We may be, and we're going to know basically what we used to know 50 years ago with people sitting out in the field with stopwatches, and who's doing what, where, and when are they, and what's slowing them down. So back in the day, we knew that time studies could improve the productivity by 10 to 20%. And people quit doing that. And we've lost that. So we don't no longer really actually measure productivity. So I think what's going to happen is AI and machine learning and all of the technology and the Internet of things or whatever is going to give us the data that we kind of used to have from time studies. And we're going to know why productivity isn't what it could be. It's going to look for roadblocks, going to look for interferences and safety issues, and it's going to see it in real time and bring it into the project controls measurements so we can do something about it like that. So I think project controls is going to be move away from the monthly report to real time. It's going to get information, and it's exciting as heck. And we all know construction hasn't improved in our lifetime. Productivity has been static, and I think we're going to see that change. Now it's going to be limited somewhat to, it's going to be an optimization thing of removing roadblocks and improvement, but it's going to be very valuable. So anyway.
And how soon you think we can be there? Like as you said, having things in real life rather than spending time gathering information, producing reports, and then by that time it's late. So I know, like still, like with the Power BI and stuff, we can do some of those real time analysis, but we are not quite there yet. So, but do you think how many years down the road we will be there?
Well, I think, in a research lab, an academic and some of these startups, it's there. Just anecdotally and case studies, and there's enough information to know that it kind of works. So I think it's still going to be 5 to 10 years before it becomes standard practice, off the shelf, grab some software and set the drones loose. That's going to be a while, but I think it's there now. And if you're not part of it, you're not looking at it, researching, talking to your conferences, because it changes every 6 weeks. You're going to be so lost. I've seen a lot of estimator peers over the years retire because they just couldn't keep up. I don't want you guys to be, uh, defunct, in 5 years, 10 years time. But I think I think I posted online. There was a paper I read 30 years ago, 35 years ago, that once something is commercialized, the very first product, even though it's extremely expensive, to the time that it becomes the dominant technology is 7 years on average. And I went through that when I worked at Kodak. I was there when the digital camera, the first one, was sold. 7 years, everybody I knew at Kodak was basically out of a job. And that transition is coming. That I think 7 years, because the first commercial products basically came out last year, with N-Plan and Octant and so forth. So now they're out in the street. 7 years, if you're not up on top of this and helping lead it, and working with it and implementing these things at your company, you're going to be out of it. So you've got 7 years. I would say 5. I would plan my career improvement maybe on a 5-year time frame.
Yeah, great. And I noticed you've been referring to drones also. I just want to give a shout out to Bian in the house today. So Bian is also an expert in applying drone in project controls. He had a presentation also last year at the summit, and it was really eye-opening on how we can even apply drone for our progress reporting and what we can do. So
Yeah.
we are almost there. It just perhaps we have not really touched that in every project. As you said, it has not become a standard in every project, but yeah, we have seen that people have been doing those new technologies and applying those in projects. But AI and machine learning still is a question whether or not we can trust the data, whether or not, as you said, what's behind that? Can we trust that information? Do we have enough information about that? And how accurate is that prediction? So a lot of things still we are not sure of, but as you said, we need to be ready. So one last question before we adjourn the session. I'm also very curious to know your insight on the risk aspect of the project, managing risk. As you just mentioned earlier, risk is heavily on statistics, on data analytics. So, and we do run Monte Carlo simulation. Yeah, of course, if you don't use at risk, I mean, if you don't use valid risk, but the thing is, now with AI and machine learning, can we really remove risk analysis? Can those machine learning and AI, and with the prediction that they do with the data, can also assess the accuracy of our estimate and our schedule? So where we are going to be in risk analysis in the future? What are your thoughts on that, John?
Well, I think it's going to improve it piece by piece. It's not there yet. It's the AI tools that are out there are really just small window of the project life cycle and say scheduling, but not cost and not operability and all of the other outcomes that we're trying to manage. But eventually it will change it night and day. So whether that's 10 years or you want to pick a year time frame, I do think that machine learning and AI will vastly, it will basically wipe out the subjective. The world right now in risk analysis is almost purely subjective, sitting around a table with a bunch of people from the team and coming up with numbers by consensus. That's really the inputs to most Monte Carlo now, and that's going to be gone. And I think in 5 years, Monte Carlo will be something quaint that we used to use. And everything else now will be data driven and understanding from the historical experience and close to real time what the true drivers of poor performance are and how to improve that. It'll all be semi-automated. I don't. So risk analysis will be more about the interpretation of what it is. And I do also want to mention that I think if you, the project control person in the future is going to be mainly a data wrangler. And data wrangling is kind of an established term in the AI world about someone that has to get the data, where's it at, get it in the right place, make sure it's assessed properly and it's clean and so forth. So you're going to find roadblocks in the data. And so project controls will be, we got this AI tool, but it's got constipation and it's not getting enough data from here. So the data wrangler will clear the roadblocks, get the access to the data, and make sure it's, So I think a lot of what we call project controls now will be less report writing and more data wrangling and understanding implications of the data. So.
Okay, great. Talking about risk, I also want to mention everyone that we are going to have a panel leading the way in project risk management at this upcoming summit in May. And John Hollmann is also one of our honored panelists. So don't miss that out if you want to learn more about how you can be ahead of the game in project risk management. So don't miss that out. And I will put that here in case you haven't heard about the conference or you want to be part of it. Industry experts such as Lance Stevenson talking about best practices and lesson learning, cost estimating will be there. John Hollmann on risk will be there. Great speakers will be there. So don't miss that opportunity. Join us there and you will learn more. And as we talked about also on digital transformation, new things and new trends, the team is leading the way in project control. So everything will be forward looking. So don't miss that out if you haven't got your ticket yet. So just a quick promo. Just wanted to make sure nobody missed that conference, especially now we're offering that for free. So with that, John, I noticed you talked so much about this readiness and this wave that's coming our way. And to be honest, now I'm a bit scared. Am I ready for this? To be honest, I just felt, oh my God, I'm not ready for this wave. We are hearing that and we are just putting it on the back seat. Okay, we are not ready for that yet in our company or in our organization, but now you gave us that warning, John. So first of all, thank you for that and giving us that future readiness outlook on what's coming up and how the future looks like for project controls. But can we end the session with some practical advice that you have for attendees on how we can lead this effort and be really ready 5 years down the road when it comes, so we are all ready and leading this on our organizations or on our projects. So what are your advice for young generations or anyone who wants to get into data analytics and leading this?
My advice for decades and on every case is educate thyself, own your career, and learn. And you can do that through books or through venues like the Project Controls products that you offer, AEC International, which is where I have spent an awful lot of my time. But just own your career and plan for educating yourself for your whole life. I'm coming up to 68 here, and I'm still learning constantly, having to read constantly, just and take ownership of that. And the people that have joined this session are probably already living that. But we're going to have to actually up the pace. Like you said, it's kind of a step change. And I do want to raise that warning. I've been around. I've seen hype. I've seen this is real. This is time. This is not just, and it's there. It's in our lap. And that's kind of what I want to put the call out. It's like, now, sign up for that course next quarter and get going, because it's coming really fast.
Okay, great. That was really an eye-opening session. Thank you so much, John, for sharing the insight and really being open to always be very willing to give away to this community. We really appreciate your time and the warning you gave us, although it's scary, but I appreciate that. So we all need to be ready for future and what's unfolding for us. So thank you so much for that. Special big thanks to anyone who joined us here in this session. Especially, we had many thought leaders and experts already joining us to learn more. So it shows how those at the top are really open to learning. John is a great example. Every time I'm having a conversation with John, he always inspired me with his new fields that he's getting into or new things that he's talking about. He's always into that treadmill of learning and never stop learning. And that's how these people are at the top of our industry. So I think if that's only one thing you're going to get away from this session is learning and commitment to learning and being ahead of the curve, know what's coming up, what the trends are. And hopefully this session gave you some kind of a wake-up call to be ready for what's coming up. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Thanks to you, John, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. Cannot wait to hear your insights at the conference at Project Control Summit. Thanks again. We
Thanks,
appreciate you.
I appreciate it. And thanks to Project Control Academy. You guys do a great job.
Thank you so much. See you next week with another live session, everyone. Thank you. Bye for now.